Regional reaction to the Barbados Prime Minister threatening to ditch the Caribbean Court of Justice. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Tuesday, May 22nd. From the CMC News Centre in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. A former CCJ president and a regional justice minister have expressed concern about a plan by Barbados Prime Minister Frandell Stewart to withdraw from the regional court if his Democratic Labour Party, the DLP, wins Thursday's elections. And a senior lawyer in Trinidad and Tobago, where the court is based, believes it's just talk and Barbados will stick with the CCJ. Speaking at a political meeting last weekend, Prime Minister Stewart expressed dissatisfaction with the court's attitude towards Barbados, which was the first country to sign on to the CCJ and was later joined by Guyana, Belize and Dominica. But he insisted that his position had nothing to do with the CCJ's recent decision against Barbados, including one that forced the Electoral Commission to allow Commonwealth citizens who meet the requirements to vote in the upcoming poll.
Here tonight commenting on the decisions. I respect, I'm an officer of the court myself as a lawyer. I respect the decisions that courts make. When I've disagreed with them, I have appealed them. And that is what every lawyer should do, what every officer of the court should do. But I'm not going to have Barbados disrespected by any politicians wearing robes. It is not going to happen. And I spoke about this privately to the president of the Caribbean Court of Justice. I don't want to influence any decisions. I don't care what they decide.
But the CCJ's first president, Michael de la Bastide, says if Barbados withdraws from the appellate jurisdiction of the court, it would be a retrograde step that would seriously undermine the standing of the court in the eyes of the people of the region. He told the Trinidad Guardian on Monday that he hoped the threat to withdraw would not become reality. And with Stewart saying he had no intention of returning to the Privy Council, which the CCJ replaced, the former president questioned whether the Prime Minister intended to make the Barbados Court of Appeal the island's final court. Meantime, Jamaica's Justice Minister Delroy Chuck says the threat by the Barbados government to leave the CCJ is evidence of a flaw in the court's jurisdiction. And he says the option of leaving the court should be removed. Chuck suggested that the constitution governing the CCJ should state that once a country joins the court, it must remain unless it is rejected by a referendum vote. Jamaica has not signed on to the CCJ as its final court of appeal, and the Justice Minister said it made no sense doing so if any member country could simply walk out of it if it wanted to do so. But a senior lawyer in Trinidad and Tobago believes the region shouldn't take Stewart's theatre, that's his threat, seriously. Speaking on Tuesday on CNC3's Morning Brew program, Senior Counsel Israel Khan said he believes it's all just talk.
I think Barbados is just peeved. The present government is just peeved that the Caribbean Court of Justice give a few decisions against that particular government, and I think it's just a statement on our political platform. It will be almost impossible for Barbados to turn back now. They will have to have the necessary majority in Parliament to do such a thing. And I think, and the judges of the Privy Council really, they are suggesting that we go away. They are suggesting that we handle our own affairs. It's only people who suffer with an inferiority complex. Lawyers and judges and the people who suffer with inferiority complex want to go with hat in hand back to our enslavers and colonial masters and ask them to interpret our laws. It's an inferiority complex.
Asked whether he thinks a Barbados withdrawal from the CCJ would have a domino effect, Khan insisted he could not envisage that, as he was positive Barbados would not be going anywhere.
1,000,000% sure Barbados is going anyway. It's just a political statement. Barbados is not going anywhere. Although Barbados is little England and Barbadian consider himself an Englishman, they have better sense than that. They're not so foolish.
Meantime, leader of the opposition Barbados Labour Party, Mia Motley, said she was embarrassed by Stewart's comments. Well, it's now less than 48 hours before Barbadians go to the polls. Over the weekend, political parties staged various activities to woo undecided voters into their respective camps. CMC's Peter Richards reports.
It's crunch time in Barbados' election campaign, and in the days leading up to Thursday's polling day, all the parties are going all out to ensure they are represented in the 30-member parliament. While there are at least 7 political parties and a record 135 candidates, the political commentators all agree the contest is a straight fight between the ruling Democratic Labour Party, the DLP of Prime Minister Frondell Stewart, and the main opposition Barbados Labour Party headed by Mia Mottley. On Monday, a public holiday here in Barbados, the two parties staged rallies and public meetings with the BLP's leader saying Barbadians need to make a change going forward.
And I say to you tonight, my friends, that if ever you needed to stand for this country, it is now. And I summon every ounce of my body to make the call to you. This is not about Mia Mottley. They have chosen to make this campaign about me. But it is because they have nothing to recommend themselves to you for re-election. It is intended to be a distraction.
But Prime Minister Stewart has accused the BLP of resorting to what he termed the bowl and soup kitchen politics of the past.
We are here to solve the country's problems and to put Barbados on a sustainable path. And that is what any government over which I preside has to be about. Not about taking advantage of people's emotional insecurities and that kind of thing and telling them what they want to hear. Oh, you don't have a job? This is because government didn't give you a job? No, just vote for us and you'll get a job. And you don't have a house? But I'm shocked. Just vote for us and we'll give you a house. And you businessman there, you can't get seed capital? And this government is in power? No, we have to get rid of them. Just vote for us and you'll get access to seed capital. And on and on and on they go.
The campaign continues tonight with various political meetings and will culminate on Wednesday night when both the DLP and the BLP will stage their national rallies in the capital. Peter Richards, CMC News, Bridgetown, Barbados.
Staying on the election front in Barbados, a political scientist believes whichever party emerges victorious will have to go to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, for assistance in turning around the ailing economy. Director of the Caribbean Development Research Services, Peter Wickham, tells the CMC that the island missed a golden opportunity to follow countries like Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis and Grenada in fashioning a homegrown structural adjustment program. The Central Bank of Barbados earlier this month said the economy had contracted by an estimated 0.7% during the first quarter of this year, and it warned that the outlook remains challenging. Wickham says the economy is a major factor in the campaign leading up to the elections, and Barbadians are worried about which political leaders will deal effectively with the IMF.
The IMF conversation is one that is a peculiar one. Clearly, it is a thing. I'd done a poll some time ago in which Barbadians were more fearful of the International Monetary Fund because we believe it means devaluation and we don't want the dollar to be devalued. At the same time, the Grenada has been to the IMF and had a good experience, and Kitts has been to the IMF and had a good experience. The challenge with Barbados is that we're not going to the IMF when Denzel Douglas went to them, or when Bob and Spencer went, or when even Keith Mitchell went. We're going to them at a point in time where the horse has galloped and the situation is really bad. So the question is it better to go to the IMF when you're standing or when you're on your knees? And clearly now we're on our knees. So I don't know what the outcome is likely to be, but my thing is, if it is that the International Monetary Fund is not the option, then what is? I'm inclined to believe, and this is certainly my own view, not necessarily the view of either of the parties, that we can't escape it, that regardless of which government wins on Thursday, that we're going to the International Monetary Fund. And then it's a question of who can negotiate better for me, right? Is it Mia Mottley or Frondell Stewart? Whose confidence do I have greater? Well, I shouldn't say Frondell Stewart, Chris Sinclair, because he's made it clear that Chris Sinclair will be the person. And I think that that is where Barbadians are more inclined to think, look, if Mia Motley if someone has to negotiate with the IMF, it's better her than Chris. Because we have seen the impact of Chris Ingler's approach to economic management, and there's some reservations regarding it.
In Jamaica, representatives of the opposition People's National Party on the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, the ECJ, are claiming political interference at the entity and is threatening the foundation of the country's democracy. On Monday, the PNP's commissioners Julian Robinson and Wentworth Skeffery called for an urgent investigation into issues that led to the resignation of Director of Elections Orette Fisher. And that call stemmed from the publication of Fisher's resignation letter and two others written to the chairman of the ECJ, pointing to instances of political interference at the commission. The ECJ issued a subsequent statement denying knowledge of such interference, but Robinson and Skeffery are not supporting that. And PNP MP Peter Bunton says there are red flags at the ECG. Still to come in Caribbean Newsline, the IMF reports growth in Grenada's economy last year and predicts even more over the next 2 years. That story and more after the break. Stay with us.
Follow your heart to the 22nd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival from June 27th to July 1st, 2018. Featuring Kester Band, Sifa Logi, Small Axe Band, Nyla Blackman, and Betty Wack. Also, Patti LaBelle, Dijon, New Vibes International, Rhythm of the Beat, and Wayne Wonder. Spice, August Alsina, Aishona, Byron Messiah, Dasha, Shaka Dimas, and Pliers, and Miss Lauren Hill. Save the date and book now for the 22nd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival, an experience like no other.
Caribbean's greatest summer line. Yeah, it's country around the time. 44 is we here. I know you love it here. Troops and festivities. We love the Caribbean. The long night, no time for sleep. Emancipate with we. Back to the folklore. Country around the 44. Back to the folklore. Welcome to our island shore. Back to the folklore. Entertainment to die for. Back to the folklore. Country around the 44.
Barbados, renowned for its pristine beachfront and fantastic weather, continues to leave quite an impression on newcomers to the island and returning visitors. The Caribbean island, quite popular as a vacation hotspot, is not only beautiful due to its natural aesthetics. The island of Barbados continues to grow in popularity because of unique connections developed with our people, our culture. We can't wait to welcome you.
The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says Grenada's economy grew by 4.5% last year. A report released on Monday, the IMF said growth was driven by strong activity in the construction, tourism and education sectors. The Washington-based agency also reported that inflation is low, falling below 1%. But it said while unemployment was falling, it was still considered high at 23.6%. The 2017 current account deficit increased by 3.5 percentage points of gross domestic product, reflecting rapid import growth. The IMF said the fiscal situation improved further in 2017, with the government overperforming the targets of the fiscal responsibility law. But a shortfall in grant financing and bottlenecks in project execution, combined with keep capital outlays well below budgeted levels. Public debt fell to 71% of GDP, reflecting the strong fiscal position, the completion of the final phase of bond restructuring, and the lowering of interest costs from restructuring some of the expensive domestic debt. The IMF said that in 2018, And 2019, the economy is expected to grow by 3.5%, benefiting from supportive global economic conditions, continued strength in construction, and a tourism sector that has shown itself to be competitive within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. In St. Kitts and Nevis, opposition leader Dr. Denzil Douglas has dismissed claims by Prime Minister Timothy Harris that his administration had caused significant damage to the country's citizenship by investment program, the CIP, and he's challenging the Prime Minister to prove his claims. As Harris delivered a keynote address to the Caribbean Investment Summit, which the Twin Island Federation hosted last week, Harris claimed that his government had to restore trust in the program, which was damaged by the callous actions of the former regime. But Douglas told CMC News that's absolute nonsense.
The CIP of St. Kitts and Nevis under my watch has been a very, very successful and trendsetter program. In fact, the platinum nature of the program has been so successful that it has been modeled by so many other countries around the Caribbean, and also in example is one of those countries that model entirely their program from ours. So to say that he met the program of St. Kitts and Nevis in a state of negativity, that is not acceptable at all. In fact, I challenge him to look at what the program was doing then in terms of numbers, what it was bringing into the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of revenue, what it is doing now, do the comparison, and he will see that our program that is under my watch has never ever faltered.
In Guyana, a High Court judge has halted the trial of former Finance Minister Dr. Ashney Singh, who is accused of illegally selling state land. Justice Franklin Holder on Monday granted the stay of proceedings in the criminal charges pending against Singh and former Chief Executive Officer of the National Industrial and Commercial Investment Limited, Winston Brassington, and that halt is until a decision is made in a challenge filed by their lawyer. The two were jointly charged by the Special Organized Crime Unit following investigations into the sale of 3 plots of state land. It alleged that they illegally sold the property for more than 900 million Guyana dollars. The death toll in one of Cuba's worst air disasters has risen to 111, with the death of one of the 3 people who initially survived the crash. Cuban state media reported that a 23-year-old student died in a Havana hospital on Monday night. The 2 other Cuban women remain in critical condition. The plane crashed shortly after takeoff on a domestic flight from Havana to the eastern city of Holguin. As the probe into the crash continued, Mexico's Civil Aviation Authority said on Monday that it had temporarily suspended the operations of Mexican company Damoj, which had leased the plane to Cuba's flagship carrier, Cubana. And ahead in Newsline Sport, a prediction that West Indies will win their series against Sri Lanka next month. We'll tell you who's making that prediction after the break. Stay with us.
From sunrise, a city filled with an island vibe, music, people, color, friendship, culture, and the warmest of smiles. Come enjoy the unique costumes, pulsating steel pans, exotic culture, exciting fetes, and unforgettable people. Discover Antigua's Carnival, the Caribbean's greatest summer festival, July 27th to August 8th, because the beach really is just the beginning.
Caribbean's greatest summer line. Yeah, it's country around my time. 44 is me here. I know you love it here. Troops and festivities. We love the Caribbean. But all night, no time to sleep.
A cricket commentator is predicting a series victory for the Windies when they take on Sri Lanka from June 6th to the 27th. And at the same time, Colin Murray feels the regional side needs to play more Test cricket. We get more in this report from TV6's Vinod Nawani.
Following reports that the three-game Test series between the Windies and Sri Lanka was being changed to a two-match contest because of financial reasons, cricket analyst Colin Murray is relieved that such is no longer the case. He says red ball cricket is something that the connoisseurs in the Caribbean have been missing badly.
We need more Test cricket. All around the world, Test cricket is flourishing. I mean, England are getting ready to play a series against Pakistan, and some of the guys flew back from the IPL to play in that series. So Test cricket is flourishing. The unfortunate thing is, because the West Indies are not doing well at Test level in the Caribbean, the crowds are just not coming out to the games.
Even though Murray knows that the Windies are struggling, he's giving them the edge against their opponents, saying that the Sri Lankans are usually vulnerable away from home.
You know, once the West Indies prepare themselves well, and you know, the bigger players click, the Hopes and the Chase and these guys, I'm hoping they click, and once they click, I think we do well. When I say well, I certainly don't think Sri Lanka is going to win the series. I really don't. I think it's either going to be a drawn series or West Indies is going to win the series, funnily enough. And it's only because we're at home.
At the same time, Murray is not taking the visitors for granted. After all, he says the Sri Lankans have a strong point, which the Windies have to be wary of during the series.
Well, if they spin, of course, they've got one or two very classy spin bowlers, you know, more than anything else. And it depends how well we handle the spin. The pitches are also going to be, it's going to play a part. I'm hoping at the Queen's Park Oval, for example, I'm hoping that we prepare a pitch with a little bit of bounce, a little bit of pace on it, which will get the ball coming onto the bat and which will suit our players more than it will suit the Sri Lankans.
Murray expects the Test series to end 1-0 in favour of the Caribbean side.
Meanwhile, former Sri Lankan captain Angelo Matthews is also setting sights on victory in the three-Test series. And he said winning a series in West Indies will be another box to tick. Matthew added that the regional side has been a force in world cricket and it would be great to win in the Caribbean. The Asian side has never won a series in the Caribbean. Sri Lanka suffered a 1-0 defeat in their first tour of the Caribbean 21 years ago, losing by 6 wickets in Antigua and drawing the second Test in St. Vincent. There was a similar series result on the 2003 tour before the Sri Lankans finally won a Test in 2007 in a series that was drawn 1-1. Matthews, who made his international debut the following year, has since become one of the side's marquee players, and the Sri Lankans are scheduled to leave for the Caribbean on Friday. Switching sports now, show jumper Kiwan Miners will represent Bermuda at this summer's Central American and Caribbean, that's the CAC Games in Colombia. The announcement was made by the Bermuda Equestrian Federation over the weekend, and Miners will partner Just Ask Eric, a 17-hand bay. He is based in Wellington, Florida, and trains with multiple professionals, including Marvis Spencer, Darian, and Victor Segovia. The CAC Games will mark this team's first time representing Bermuda on the international stage at this level of competition. And the show jumping contest will consist of a maximum of 40 riders with a total of 8 teams and 8 individuals. The games will run from July 20th through August 3rd. And finally, in horse racing, high-profile Barbadian jockey Rico Walcott produced a classy ride aboard Red Hot favourite to win the co-featured $50,000 Canadian dollar Vancouver Sun Stakes at Hastings Racetrack on Monday. The pair made all the running over the 6.5 furlong trip to beat the 3-year-old and upward fillies and mares by 3 lengths in a time of 1 minute 17.22 seconds. Hastings track announcer Dan Jekish has the call.
Field of 9 fillies and mares sent on the way to Vancouver Sun. And wasting no time, Alfred Bay put right on the early lead. Touching Promise in second. It's Yukon Bell third, Princess Katie fourth. Curlish Figures at the rail. Up on the outside, Good Luck to You. Then Storm Stalker sailing for the Sun. And Notice the Jewel is your late trailer. Into the clubhouse turn they go, and Alfred Bay leads it now by a tight length. Touching Promise, second now by 2. From the outside is Yukon Bell. On the inside, Curly's Figure. Length and a half back is Sailing for the Sun. Storm Stalkers in between runners. Princess Katie wide. Then 2 back is Good Luck to You, and 3 to Notice the Jewel. That opening quarter, 22 and 3. Past the 5/16 they go now, and it is Alfred Bay by 3/4 of a length. Touching Promise, second by a length and a half. Curlish Figure down on the inside will lead a way through, followed by Yukon Bell, Sailing for the Sun, and Storm Stalker. 1/8 of a mile from home in the Vancouver Sun, and Alfred Bay is opened up now by 2, and down the lane they come. Alfred Bay by 2.5. Touching Promise, Curlish Figure at the rail, and Yukon Bell. But the Vancouver Sun goes to Alfred Bay, winning it by 3. Curlish Figure up for second, Touching Promise third, Sailing for the Sun fourth.
And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
From sunrise, a city filled with an island vibe, music, people, color, friendship, culture, and the warmest of smiles. Come enjoy the unique costumes, pulsating steel pans, exotic culture, exciting fetes, and unforgettable people. Discover Antigua's Carnival, the Caribbean's greatest summer festival, July 27th to August 8th, because the beach really is just the beginning.
Again, the major developments of this day. The CCJ's first president warns that if a declaration by Barbados' Prime Minister to leave the court becomes reality, it would seriously undermine the standing of the court in the eyes of the region's people. And in sport, cricket commentator Colin Murray is predicting a series victory for the Windies when they take on Sri Lanka in a 3-test series next month. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, log on to KanaNews.com. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and do have yourselves a good night.